I go. Welcome everybody to SAFNOG-6 Day 2. Are we ready, Manny? A warm welcome to SAFNOG-6 Virtual Conference. We'd like to acknowledge our partners for their contributions in making this event possible. We thank our sponsors, Akamai, Flex Optics, Team Camry, Africa Data Centers, ICANN, the Internet Society, Work Online, IXZA, Links, and NAP Africa for their partnership and support for this conference. We would also like to thank our speakers who will be imparting their knowledge and expertise on this platform today. Our attendees, we thank all participants who are here with us. Without you, we would not be gathered here today. There are a few house rules that we're just going to go through. This meeting is being recorded, and the recording will be made available after the meeting. We would like to encourage all participation of all attendees throughout the event via our Q&A and chat functions. We request that you please engage respectfully and responsibly. When speaking or asking questions, we ask that you keep it short and simple and straight to the point. Please make use of the Q&A function, especially to pose questions to our speakers. For general info or feedback, please feel free to use the chat functions. Please note that all questions will be read out to each speaker at the end of the presentation. However, please send your questions at any point. Without further ado, please allow me to introduce our first speaker, Job Snyders from Fastly. Thank you, Job.
Thank you. Hi, I am Job Snyders from Fastly, and today I want to talk a little bit about some aspects of the RPKI technology stack you may have been wondering about. What I do for a job is I'm a programmer and a network engineer, and I work on the intersection between the BGP plane and the RPKI plane to help progress routing security. So today's agenda, I want to cover a little bit something you may already know, how popular RPKI is. I want to explain some analogies between the RPKI network and the BGP network as we know it. I will elaborate on a distinction between online and offline protocols and cover how RPKI differs in terms of timers compared to, say, other technologies. And then last but not least, we'll be looking forward to projects that are underway and will materialize in the next few years, which are built on top of the RPKI. At the end, there is time for questions and comments. So how popular is this RPKI thing? I think by now, from simple measurements, it is clear that it is extremely popular. 31% of all IP space is covered by RPKI ROAS, and 38% of the autonomous systems which are seen in the default free zone, the core of the internet, have ROAS pointed towards them. And I estimate that more than 27,000 companies are participating in the global RPKI by, for instance, having created ROAS or doing origin validation on their BGP routers or doing both. And then finally, nowadays, all major transit providers and major IXPs filter BGP routes based on RPKI. So creating RPKI ROAS and validating BGP updates based on RPKI ROAS, both are worthwhile because they offer fairly good coverage in the internet address space. So what is the RPKI? I kind of like to think about the default free zone as spaghetti. It goes in all kinds of directions, and the RPKI can be viewed as a mechanism to enforce a degree of order in the spaghetti. So what are some analogies between RPKI and BGP? Both can be viewed as a graph, as a network of nodes that are connected to each other with edges. But in the BGP plane, the nodes in the graph are autonomous systems. In the RPKI plane of existence, these are called certificate authorities. In the BGP protocol, there is no technical limitation to what you can tell your neighbors. It is up to the neighbors to apply proper filters and do due diligence. And this, of course, results in both. This has helped BGP grow to its current size, but it also poses challenges because none of us like hijacks or route leaks. In the RPKI, there is a difference compared to BGP in that regard, because in the RPKI, you can only announce or publish about resources which are constrained by your parent. So this is a very big difference between BGP and RPKI. RPKI is a hierarchical constrained mechanism, whereas BGP, anything goes. And that's why they go well together. Another interesting aspect is that the flow of information in BGP is a bidirectional peer-to-peer protocol. You have two machines and they are aware of each other's liveliness. But the RPKI is a one-way protocol where there is no communication from the relying parties back to the certificate authorities. So you can kind of think about this as if it's like multicast, but now in cryptographic flavoring. And then finally, I want to make a distinction between BGP being an online protocol and RPKI being an offline protocol. Online, offline. What does this mean in this context? It is a figure of speech. Let's call the default free zone online and the RPKI offline. They exist in different realms, but they interact with each other. The reason I prefer to call BGP online is that each and every BGP session has very frequent periodic liveliness checking through the use of BGP keep alive messages. And this is used as a proxy to understand if a data plane forwarding path is possible towards the destination. So to phrase this differently, if you look at a BGP router and you rip out all fibers, all network cables, the BGP router's routing table will be empty because it saw all BGP sessions go down, and then it flushes out any routes pointing at the interface that just now went down. But the RPKI is very different in this regard. Any messages that are distributed through the RPKI carry inside the message until when the message is valid. So the freshness of RPKI data is not associated to, say, the interface status or the BGP session status, but is associated to an expiration date that is contained within the RPKI messages themselves. So BGP is connection-oriented or online-oriented, whereas the RPKI uses time as a dimension to impact until when messages are valid or under what circumstances they are valid. So on a RPKI validator, if you were to force the computer's clock forward, say 2 days, then you see its internal tables go empty. Another awesome phenomena in the RPKI is that we now have a thing called transitive expiration timers. In BGP, there are no expiration timers on the messages themselves because everything is tied up to the BGP sessions being live. And in, for instance, the IRR, Internet Routing Registry System, there also are no expiration moments. The moment you create an IRR route object, it will be there forever and ever until the IRR database operator, for one reason or another, deletes the object. But the RPKI functions very different. Each and every object has timers associated with them, and you have to refresh as resource holder, as producer of ROAS, you have to refresh your information every few hours or every day to stay alive in the RPKI. Now, if you click the blue link, you'll be brought to a website called the console. It's based on RPKI client, and it shows you a decoding of specific objects discovered in the RPKI. And if we zoom in on a ROA for work online, the ROA authorizes their ASN to originate a certain /40 IPv6 prefix. But there are many, many timers relevant in how we can interpret that ROA. The ROA itself contains an entity certificate. So inside that ROA file is both the ROA E content and a X509EE certificate. And that one expires somewhere in June 2025. So that's years into the future. The ROA has been signed by a parent. The parent itself also has an expiration date. That one is in March 2022. The parent's certificate revocation list expires September 28th, just after midnight. So that was last night when I was preparing these slides. The parent's parent is valid until 2025. Then the parent's CRL is valid until 2021. And then finally, the Afrinic RPKI root trust anchor is valid until 2030. So out of all these moments that relate to the RPKI ROA, the transitive expiration date is the one that is soonest. So CRLs are a critical component of the RPKI technology stack, and CRLs generally are fairly short-lived. And with short-lived, we mean that they expire, say, 6 to 32 hours into the future. And this means that as CA, you periodically need to refresh your CRL, but also that as relying parties, as network operators doing origin validation, our validators need to attempt to contact each publication point at least once an hour, just to make sure that we receive the most recent CRL. So this transitive expiration moment is something that does not exist in BGP or IRR and is a new element in the RPKI. The RPKI is a framework, it's a foundation. And many people have come to think of origin validation and ROAS as synonymous to RPKI, but the RPKI is much more than just ROAS and origin validation. The RPKI is a general purpose cryptographic framework through which network operators can do all kinds of amazing things now and in the coming years. So one of the developments in the IETF is a technology called resource signed checklists. And this is a mechanism through which a resource holder, for instance, whoever owned that /40 from 2 slides ago, can make statements where they sign that statement with a number, with an IP address or with an AS number. And right now, all of this may sound a little bit abstract and vague, but I think in a year or so, you'll see multiple innovations based on RSC, such as bring your own IP facilitation or cross-connect provisioning, where a data center operator can obtain cryptographic proof that whoever is requesting the cross-connect also has access to the private keys related to a specific ASN or IP address. Or another cool application would be to automate signing up for services like Peering DD. So I think that the universal availability of RSC will bring some interesting developments in our community. Another aspect that might excite some is the development of a technology called ASPA. With origin validation, we can confirm if the origin of the BGP update matches what the owner of the IP block intended to happen. But it doesn't tell us anything about the path. So origin validation doesn't really help against route leaks or a cappella attacks. Now, ASPA is a mechanism through which you can express in the RPKI what your desired policy is and what others should accept as valid paths or invalid AS paths towards you. So ASPA will be a means to help mitigate route leaks, because it will enable providers to indicate who their neighbors are, who is allowed to provide transit to me. Another cool and exciting development that is in very, very early stages is the concept of certificate transparency. If we look at other PKIs, such as Web PKI, Let's Encrypt is a very famous certificate issuer in that space. The Web PKI community found out that there is benefit to logging all certificates that have been issued in what is called an immutable log. This helps people understand who is issuing certificates for what resources, and then retrospectively figure out were they allowed to do so or not. And it all in all provides for a great debugging log to understand what exactly happened in the RPKI today. So I think that certificate transparency has been incredibly beneficial to the Web PKI community. And I envision that certificate transparency concepts will also benefit the RPKI community and help increase the reliability and our ability to trust and rely on the RPKI technology stack for business purposes. And then finally, BGP-SEC is another development that is exciting to investigate and explore, because BGP-SEC allows us to automate the setup of private and public peering and negotiate with other ASNs at an AS level rather than a per BGP session level. So an analogy that the problem space in some regards is similar to TCP MD5 or TCP AO, but then you protect just integrity of a single BGP session, and you have no assurances that any BGP sessions downstream also were protected with TCP MD5 or TCP AO. But with BGP-SEC, you have assurances that the entire path was exactly as it claims to be, because we can verify the signatures on the path. And some cloud operators are now investigating whether BGP-SEC has value in partial deployments. So these are 4 technologies that are in development or under investigation by implementers, and I think these 4 will make our lives easier in the next few years. And with that, I want to open up the floor for questions, comments, concerns, anything you want to share with me.
Thank you, Joel. The Q&A and chat is open for any questions. Please feel free to post them. And the poll is up for Joel's presentation.
I cannot vote on my own presentation. How limiting.
You've covered everything.
If you have questions at any future point in time, when you're working on creating ROAS or when you're working to deploy RPKI origin validation in your own network, feel free to reach out to me via email or Twitter. I'm happy to help people.
Okay, we've got one question, Joel. What is an a cappella attack?
Anton Capella is an American security researcher who managed to construct an attack on the BGP routing system by making a very clever sequence of injections into specific networks in such a way that you can insert yourself as the middleman, but remain fairly invisible to anybody that's logging BGP data. And to prevent such forgeries, technologies like BGP-SEC can be beneficial because you can verify the authenticity of the BGP updates as you receive them. I'll drop a link to describe the a cappella attack in the chat after my presentation.
Okay, thank you. I hope that answered the anonymous attendee's question. The next question is, what is the purpose of accepting an invalid prefix with lower local preference?
I would say that goes against best current practices. The best current practice in relation to origin validation based on RPKI is to reject or ignore invalid route announcements. There have been suggestions in the community that invalid prefixes should be assigned a lower local preference compared to valid prefixes or prefixes not covered by RPKI ROAS. But the big downside is that by merely downpreffing a route, if the route is more specific than the original legitimate route, more specific routes always win. So downpreffing invalid routes is somewhat of a useless exercise because you get none of the benefits of the RPKI security framework. Now, there's another aspect to consider, that modifying the path attributes based on the RPKI validation state can result in a negative interaction between RPKI and BGP. Because imagine that when your validator crashes or somebody adds a ROA in the AFRINEC portal or removes a ROA in the AFRINEC portal, the validation state will change for all BGP routers participating in origin validation. And any BGP routers where routing policy specified that the local preference must be manipulated or a BGP community must be added, means that the creation of a ROA will result in BGP messages being generated and flooded through the network. So long story short, do not modify any path attributes based on the validation state, because if there's an instability in the RPKI, it results in an instability in the BGP world. And while it is beneficial to use RPKI data to secure our BGP routing, it is important to pay close attention to such details to avoid any problems in the RPKI bleeding over into the BGP plane.
Sorry, next question. We've got a few that came in. Any hopes that path validation will ever become a reality?
So there's two aspects to path validation that are quite easily confused. There is the integrity of the path, which is something that BGP-SEC solves, and there's expressing and honoring policy, and that's something ASPA attempts to solve. So both improve security, and both are not mutually exclusive. They do not solve the same problem. The potential value of a partial BGP-SEC deployment exists primarily when you deploy BGP-SEC on high-value connections. High-value connections usually have great commercial significance and usually have the highest local preference. So, for instance, customer-facing or when a CDN node is embedded in a service provider's network, that type of connection would benefit from the combination of BGP-SEC and origin validation. So the benefits of partial BGP-SEC deployment really hang on where you deploy BGP-SEC. So I imagine that for instance, your transit connection is generally the lowest local preference because you prefer private and public peering. So the transit connection with the most routes and essentially in most deployments the least traffic are also the least interesting to protect with BGP-SEC. But any connections where you're exchanging a lot of traffic, but the number of prefixes on both sides and the number of updates is relatively low, those might be worth protecting with BGP-SEC. But BGP-SEC is a multi-year project, so I'm now talking about dreams and futures and not something that you can deploy today easily.
Okay, thank you. One more question. Is there any tools to monitor RPKI validation flags?
The tools, I've built some tools myself to help me understand what the state of the RPKI is and how things are doing. I'll drop a link in the chat after my presentation, but one of the tools is called the RPKI Client Console. And I have other tooling such as rpkiviews.org, which is sort of modeled after route views, which periodically collects raw RPKI data for later analysis. But this is an area that is still in development, and there are multiple organizations trying to innovate to make the inherent structure of RPKI data and its behaviors more accessible to a wider audience, because RPKI is not an easy technology.
Okay.
I see one more question. Are there any open source BGPs currently working on implementing the other ideas you mentioned on the last slide? Yes. The American Institute for Standards and Technology, NIST, has done a lot of research into implementing both ASPA and BGP-SEC in open source BGP daemons such as BERT and FRR. So that's definitely worth checking out. And I know that multiple RPKI validator implementers are also working to understand resource sign checklists. So yes, there's a lot of developments going on, especially in the open source community. And it is very interesting to see that the open source community is able to move at a higher pace than the commercial off-the-shelf vendors that you traditionally see in carrier networks. So I hope that answers the question.
Okay. So far, has any potential value in partial BDG SEC implementation been detected? Yes, the value of BGP-SEC is primarily in protecting what I call high value links. So if you put a cache or a special service and you construct an agreement, a private peering agreement with your neighbors to exchange IP traffic at high volume, you'll generally see that those type of connection are very sensitive to the customer experience. There's a lot of traffic loads on the link, but in terms of BGP updates back and forth, it usually is a stable area of the network. And in that type of deployment scenario, BGP-SEC has a lot of value, especially when combined with origin validation,
because it makes it impossible for attackers to insert themselves into the path. But you have to be thoughtful about where BGP-SEC deployments can make sense and where they make less sense. So, for instance, on a full table connection, BGP-SEC will make less sense than on a private or public peering session.
Thank you, Job. That was a great session. And the poll went up. If you've missed it, I think we'll put it up again. Thank you very much. It was very informative.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. Next up, we have John Todd from Quad 9. How are you, John?
Hello, fine. My audio coming through okay?
We can hear you loud and clear.
Great, great. One moment, let me share my desktop. Okay, are we good to go?
We're good.
Okay, thanks. Thank you, good afternoon. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to speak. My name is John Todd. I am the General Manager for Quad 9. And I'm going to talk to you today about some changes or some existing changes and some upcoming changes in the DNS that have, I think, are worth knowing if you're a network service provider, internet service provider, or other large operator of networks. So a quick overview of what Quad 9 is and who we are. Quad 9 is a nonprofit based in Switzerland. We've been in public operation for a few years now in a very large array of systems around the world. We're in about 180 cities, 90 nations, including 3 locations currently in South Africa. Cape Town, Durban, and Johannesburg. And before I'm sure someone razzes me on this, yes, Cape Town is in bypass as of today. We will be fixing that soon. But we offer secure recursive services on a number of different flavors of address space. And when I say secure, we have security filtering that we apply to the recursive resolvers, if you so choose, preventing malware, phishing, spyware, and other bad things from happening by using the DNS as a block. We have about 20 different security intelligence providers giving us lists of malicious domains that we apply to the DNS. And then every recursive resolver request is compared against those filters, and if the request is legitimate, it completes, and if it's not, we reply back with an NX domain. We do actually have unblocked or unsecure address as well. If you can look at our website, we can show you different flavors of Quad 9 service. So actually, we do have an unfiltered version as well. We also have an ECS enabled version. We'll talk about ECS here in just a moment. One of our, of course, our interests are, or people are interested in our service because of the security services that we provide, but also because we're very high privacy. As a nonprofit, we don't log or monetize any personal data, and that's regulated by Swiss data protection laws and as well as the GDPR. So our mission is to provide a better and more secure internet using the DNS. I won't go into the details of our mission here at length, but Quad 9's goals are to provide a service to anybody at no cost to provide better security and stability for the internet. Additionally, our goal is to try to help improve the security and stability of the DNS in general, not necessarily through our service, but by pushing the state of the art as far as things like privacy and security are concerned. So this talk is sort of an adjunct to that part of our mission. Well, we'll be talking about what the DNS looks like, what the future technologies hold, and whether you use our service or not, what you might want to start looking at in the future. So I'm going to be talking about recursive DNS and not authoritative. My apologies if the title of the talk was not that specific, but I try to stay out of some of the political layers around authoritative services. The recursive is challenging enough at the moment. And I'm going to try to just give you a general overview of some of the changes that are occurring in the DNS, and to get you interested in looking at recursive DNS and DNS in general as a place where there is change occurring and that you should be paying attention to. Changes are going to be coming very quickly. Some of the ideas we'll be talking about have been around for a few years, and some are newer, and some are actually pre-standards, and I'll be kind of showing you some of those and comparing them against the way things have been done. So DNS has been a relatively stable and slow-moving technology for the last 30 or so years. That's been a very good thing, and that because DNS has worked generally quite well, but there are some significant flaws that are now starting to become more apparent that need to be solved. But to give you kind of an overview, the protocol has been UDP. There's been no encryption on DNS because it's been a very local service supplied typically by the ISP or the local network administrator. There's a server or an edge cache very close relatively network-wise to the end user. And the configuration for that is that the operating system is typically configured to talk to a specific recursive server by DHCP or something very similar to DHCP if you're a cable operator or otherwise, but it's been a single transaction for configuration, and it's been very trusted, meaning that configuration is automatically accepted by the operating system and just put in as an IP address. Speeds have been best effort, and they've been typically pretty good. Again, UDP is quite rapid, and having caching has worked well over the past. Some of the newest things that have happened is that ECS or eDNS client subnet has appeared, and some places use ECS to provide the first 3 octets or the first several hextets of an IPv6 address to the authoritative resolver in order to provide better insight as to where a CDN should respond with content. So that's been one of the newer things that's happened in the last several years. That is, I would call that part of the slow progress of DNS. And then as far as data integrity, meaning can you trust the data in the DNS, there's not been a lot. DNS-SEC is the technology which is used for data integrity, and it has not progressed as rapidly as we would like. So it does exist, but generally data integrity has been not something that's happened particularly well within the DNS until recently. Some TLDs have a much higher penetration of DNS-SEC as far as signatures than others, and then some DNS servers have been doing validating resolution, meaning that they discard DNS responses that are not DNS-SEC signed, but that until recently they've been relatively in the minority on both of those. So let's talk a little bit about the new ways of the way DNS is going to work. So there have been few changes in the last 30 years. There are shortly going to be lots of changes. In fact, there already are lots of changes recently, and that pace is going to be speeding up. This is going to be a big shock for people who have more or less left their DNS servers alone for many years. We're shifting to TCP as the protocol which is highly preferred. And the reason for that is encryption. TLS encryption is now starting to become highly favored by operators, both of the DNS services themselves and the underlying applications. We'll get into that in a second. The suppliers, currently, it is still the case that ISPs are the supplier of DNS recursive resolution, but soon that's going to look more like cloud operators and also network service providers. And there's going to be a little bit of a contention there about who actually provides DNS recursive resolution services. What is the resolver for the client, or where is the resolution decision being made? Is it going to be in the operating system? Well, maybe, but right now there's currently certainly a fight between what I would call application level resolution and operating system level resolution. The recent decision or the recent process by Mozilla to choose DNS providers in their application has spawned a number of different copycats. And so now the question is that going to reside in applications, or is it going to swing back to the operating system, and why? And then who configures that? Even if the application does do the resolution, who configures it? And that's still a question that's up for answering. Again, how an application or an operating system chooses what resolver to use is part of some of the upcoming standards that are in process. Speeds. UDP has been quite rapid and caching has been fairly local, but there are some of these new technologies that actually push the resolution much further into the network. And so how fast that is a question. It may actually be slower in some circumstances, again, due to TLS, TCP, and other overhead, as well as distance. If it's a cloud resolver that's far away from your customers, then it may actually be slower in some circumstances. Does that result in any noticeable change? Again, that's up to debate. CDN tuning, ECS, again, there are two strong camps on ECS. Some providers or some CDNs are certainly very interested in providing ECS. It's treated as a security leak by others. And so ECS is explicitly prohibited by other platforms, or it's not being used in favor of using other methods to determine the best path for delivering customer content at speed. And then data integrity. So we've gone from data integrity with DNSSEC being limited to now it's much more expanded. I'm very pleased in the last year to see DNSSEC increasing. With the addition of encryption, we get also more data integrity, not just from the authoritative server to the recursive, but from the recursive to the end user. So DNSSEC is improved significantly by the delivery of those packets in an encrypted form to the actual end user. So all of these look like pretty significant changes, and I would say that these are all going to start shifting, and there's going to be acceleration in some of these in the next year. So what was a very stable and predictable technology platform and model is going to be changing rapidly, ending in somewhat chaos. The way that this is shifting from both the where the DNS lives in the network, who provides it, who has control over it is a very contentious subject right now, with lots of opinions on both sides. And those opinions are converting themselves into protocols which are going to be applied to your network and to your end users, whether you like it or not. So let's go a little bit into kind of what's already here and how those are going to also be changing. So DNS over TLS and DNS over HTTPS are already here. And there's going to be more conversion to encrypted protocols over time. Chrome products already have this capability. Android has had it for quite some time. iOS now has it as a default built in if you give it the right settings. Windows has announced support for encryption, and then the traditional recursive resolvers and or forwarding caches like Unbound and Bind are also supporting it for outbound connections. So these are almost always good things, this encryption model. It's again the configuration and where the actual recursive resolution is being done is the question. I said I wasn't going to go into authoritative, and I will say, actually, I will push out one more thing and say, if you do operate a customer base of both authoritative and recursive users, please try to encourage your users to do DNSSEC for your hosted customers or for your own domains. This is a significant benefit from a security and even from a performance standpoint, as well as things like DDoS protection. DNSSEC gives you a significant advantage there. DNSSEC validation, meaning does your recursive resolver reject queries that fail DNSSEC? This is now kind of what I'd call table stakes. Your recursive resolver really should do DNSSEC validation, and then in accompanying with that, the question of NTAs or negative trust anchors is a question. Like, in other words, if something fails and it shouldn't, how do you handle NTAs? That adds somewhat to your customer service load, so that's something that needs to be considered if you do DNSSEC validation. Other things already in production are that cloud services are picking up traffic because they offer some or all of these functionalities, whereas network service providers or ISPs sometimes do not. So the quads, such as Quad 9, Google, Cloudflare, and others, such as Cisco, are gaining in traction, and the percentage of queries being answered by cloud services is increasing over time. which is a function of both users being interested in that as well as applications and operating systems defaulting to those cloud-based services. Lastly, looking again at why there's this conversion to some of these both encryption and cloud service models is that things like security-oriented services are interesting to end users and end networks. Being able to apply security through the DNS is a very cheap and easy way to prevent a certain number of faults or attacks. And so if you can do that at no cost or low cost, there's no reason not to. There are additionally other types of filtering services that are quite appealing, such as family-friendly systems for parents. Advertisement filters or ad blocking is quite popular via the DNS as well. And then there are also some what I would call more unusual reasons to look at cloud service providers, such as having alternate routes. There's some cryptocurrency or some blockchain concepts which are using the DNS to deliver data as well in their model, outside of the standard route, which requires use of alternate platforms. So what's coming? Meaning, what are the things that maybe you haven't heard of that are in the pipeline for the DNS that affect some of these new technologies? Dynamic discovery of DNS services, or what's DDR is the acronym that's now being used in the drafts. This hopefully is going to get around some of the problems right now where applications such as Chrome, as an example, have a list of potential upgrade services. So if you are using one of the large cloud providers that has a trusted privacy model, at least according to Chrome's list or Mozilla's list, and that in some cases, they would do an automatic upgrade to encryption, or they'll automatically convert you over to that resolver. The goal is to try to prevent this from being lists and to try to have a model where DNS systems that are encrypted can be automatically discovered. So that is a very interesting proposal right now going through the IETF, and I'm hopeful that will be adopted shortly. So applications are driving DNS choices. Again, looking at Mozilla, Chrome, Android, less so, but applications are starting to make the decision of what DNS servers to use. This is becoming a problem in security where malicious applications are also deciding that they want to use encrypted security. DOH is the problem child there because it's difficult to detect the difference between a standard 443 malicious payload, legitimate payload, DNS payload, or anything else. So the fact that DNS is starting to move over to port 443 is both a blessing and a curse, as applications will be able to use DNS and make decisions on their own without having to integrate with the operating system. Some new DNS protocols that are getting some traction in certain areas are things like adaptive DNS. Adaptive DNS has the ability to cause certain domains to skip recursive resolvers entirely and actually talk directly to the authoritative systems in order to get their answers. So caching and other controls, local policy that might be in place on a recursive resolver would be avoided because the application or the operating system may choose to talk directly to the authoritative server without a recursive resolver in place. That's a very interesting and potentially problematic service. There are extensions to adaptive, I believe, that allow you to say not to use it, whether the application chooses to listen to your signals or not, or if you have an MDM of some sort, if you're doing enterprise management, hopefully that will be able to be skipped and your recursive resolver should be used. But interesting in any case where logging is lost as far as when adaptive DNS could be utilized. Oblivious DNS. Oblivious DNS is an interesting solution to the privacy problem, where DNS requests are actually answered in a two-stage process. An encrypted session is created to what's called a proxy. A proxy cannot see the actual request itself. It knows that there's an encrypted inbound session from a client, and that the client has specified a target. And then the proxy sends the request to the target. The target is then a standard recursive resolver is typically behind the target. So what happens is that the target resolver cannot see the IP address of the requester, giving them some privacy. And then the proxy cannot see the request, but it knows the IP address of the target. So Oblivious DNS solves, very neatly solves a privacy problem, but what it introduces is a double layer of now you're sending all of your queries through 2 steps instead of 1. So there's some both network latency as well as customer service issues. If there's a problem, like who do you point the finger at? So those are interesting problems to try to figure out. Another item on the horizon is encryption to authoritative servers between the recursive and authoritative. This has been a pending horizon issue for quite some time. We're very interested in seeing that happen. That would be an adjunct to DNS-SEC, so it would actually encrypt and make those queries opaque as well as trusted if you're using DNS-SEC in the middle. And then what is already here but not being utilized significantly is extended DNS error, or EDE, to incorporate more information into either negative or positive replies in the DNS. I'm hopeful that that sees some more activity in the next year or two, so that when, as an example, an NX domain or a serve fail is provided by a recursive resolver, that there can be some additional information that is provided along with the response. So what's coming soon? Additionally, as a recursive operator, there are some significant national filtering issues depending on what nation you're in, as well as copyright questions. Quad 9, for a side note, is in the middle of a lawsuit at this point in Germany about copyright, which is a very interesting and potentially precedent-setting lawsuit about responsibility for remote content operators. And then also privacy regulations. People are becoming aware that privacy is a significant issue, and laws are being applied to DNS more rigorously. So conclusions for NSPs. Encryption to the end device is always good and should be encouraged, and you should run systems, or you should look into systems that actually promote that. Start to look at deploying DOH or other encryption systems. Outsourcing might be a good idea and might reduce some of your risks, or it might not. So look at seeing if there's some way that you might be able to partner with a cloud provider. I'm not just saying that for Quad 9, I'm saying that that actually might reduce some of your costs and burdens from operating a recursive resolver as these complexities increase. Additionally, if you do outsource, maybe that also shifts some of your customer service issues away, but probably not. So that also is something to take into consideration, that the end user is always going to call you depending on where the fault is, even though that might be fairly deep upstream in some of these encrypted layers or with these additional tags on DNS. If you want to stay relevant to your customer base, please get involved in at least understanding some of the emerging standards that are currently in discussion at the IETF. These do actually have significant impact on how your customers or how your users interact with the internet, and it's worth being involved, or at least reading summaries. I would actually suggest Jeff Houston has very good summaries coming out of the DNS working groups, and if you can look at some of his summary documents, they're actually pretty good to get an overview of what's happening. Become familiar with DOH, because that is going to sort of be the default for end users, I believe, in the future. Get one running, both unbound, bind. PowerDNS has a version of a front end called DNS dist. I would strongly suggest you take a look at some of those. Become familiar with the privacy and jurisdiction laws regarding DNS. Those are changing. Look at some other nations as far as what they're doing with DNS, and figure out if that's going to apply to you. Implement a good voluntary policy. RFC 8932 has been announced, which has some excellent pointers as far as what you should put into your privacy policies, specifically regarding DNS and logging. Expect to spend a lot more time on DNS management, deploying some of these new code bases, looking at how you ensure complete reliability in a TCP world. is going to be expensive and time consuming, where DNS previously was a fairly easy solution. It's no longer going to quite be that easy going forward. Turn on DNSSEC validation, please, and please sign your zones. And then I'm trying not to discourage you from running your own DNS. In fact, quite the opposite. I would say that Quad 9 really does want to see decentralized DNS working better as long as it is more secure and more private. Even running something like a forwarding cache inside your organization gives you the ability to have local visibility, logging, apply policy locally. And then if you forward out your queries to an organization like Quad 9 for additional security or for speed or for handling some of those upstream questions like eventually authoritative to recursive encryption, that's a good way to retain a lower cost infrastructure while handing off some of the load to some of the cloud providers. So I'm hopefully not discouraged anybody, and I hopefully I've encouraged you to look at some of the emerging specifications and given you a very rapid fire insight into some of the things that are coming down the pike. And I think I am now open for questions if we have any.
Thank you, John. Yes, we do have some questions.
Great.
First one is why DNS is kept on best effort. Probably kept.
Why it is kept on best effort? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Why it is kept on best effort? So UDP, of course, is a lossy protocol, and so if you've got multiple layers of the DNS, as in from client to recursive to authoritative, that's been best effort, meaning you can lose packets. And now that's becoming not best effort. Hopefully, having TCP at the client to recursive, we now have some authority to say that that's not going to be best effort, that's going to be guaranteed transport. We need to convert that up to between the recursive and the authoritative. Anycast has made best effort much better over the last number of years, where most large authoritatives are now running Anycast, so that improves performance significantly. And now also most recursives are running, or big recursives are running Anycast as well. So again, that's I guess improved performance away from best effort to better performant. I'm hopefully understanding the question enough.
Thank you. Next question. What future impact will the current work by the IETF Drive working group on opportunistic encryption between authoritatives and resolvers have on the DNS ecosystem?
Oh, that's a talk in itself. I'll just focus on one. DNSSEC has been, to date, been the way that we have assured answers come back to a recursive resolver correctly from an authoritative, so that they are signed, because there is a belief that packets can be corrupted in flight. So when we move to an encrypted model between the recursive and the authoritative service, we add an additional layer of security that prevents packets from being corrupted in flight, or prevents, or at least reduces significantly the surface for attack for corruption. So I think that's a huge benefit of recursive to authoritative encryption. I don't know if that will result in a reduction in the interest in DNSSEC or not. I hope it doesn't, but it might, because it does provide some of the benefits of DNSSEC using that encrypted layer. So an opportunistic encryption, I think, is a good thing, no matter whether it's between the client and the recursive or the recursive and the authoritative.
Okay, thank you. We've got 1 minute left for one more question. How do you, as Quad 9, deal with the policy issues in various countries you operate? Example, gambling. What happens when countries have relevant authorities in place?
So this is a whole talk in itself. In most countries, over-the-top DNS is not considered part of the telecommunications infrastructure. So as an example, Switzerland, the nation in which Quad 9 has its headquarters, Switzerland does actually have a restriction for telecommunications service providers and prevents them from resolving a certain set of host names, which are gambling sites. However, Quad 9, as we don't actually have infrastructure, meaning we don't run physical circuits or actually connect users to the content at the IP layer, we have an exception in Switzerland that says that we are not a telecommunications service provider. So under that context, we do not have to comply with those particular regulations. At this point, most nations have either sidestepped that question, or they have recognized over-the-top DNS providers as not telecommunications vendors that need to subscribe to those particular laws. On a case-by-case basis, we have to evaluate, though, if we get requests and determine how we're going to comply with those legal requirements, or whether it's an issue where we would need to withdraw service from the country if it's outside our boundaries of acceptable interference. So again, that's a whole talk. That's actually not. That's a whole conference itself. But yeah, that's how it's handled currently.
Thank you very much, John. We
Thank you.
appreciate that. It was very informative as well. So we've run a bit over time, so we're going to skip the break. Eddie, are you ready for us? Is Eddie there? Hi, Eddie.
Can we hear me?
I can hear you now.
Oh. Personal discussion that I'll have with Crystal.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. And
We'll start.
my camera seems not to be visible.
Your camera is on.
Okay.
You can start.
Okay, fine. It feels weird when you don't see what others are seeing. You know, I'm quite tall, and I need to make sure that I'm in the normal sense of the length. And unfortunately, this face-to-face meeting are not allowing us to have the level of interaction that we want to have. So thank you very much to the SAFNOG organizers for inviting me. And we've been partners with SAFNOG for quite some time. And today, when we discussed about the topic, the question was lesson learned, or actually learning lessons, because I think we all are learning. And in my case at Afrinic, I've been learning lessons for quite some time. And I'd want to continue when I know that my slides are ready to be showed. There's not much slides. It's actually 4 of them, but I'll use them at one point in the discussion. And I'll just need to make sure that Mark is helping me with that. Okay, I can do it.
Are the slides? Oh, there we go. Thank you.
Well, I've found my way along there, and I just hope I'm not going to delay much into full screen. Okay. So thank you again for the invitation. As I was saying, I'm not going to spend too much time. I know I have 30 minutes and you didn't have a break, but I imagine that you are very eager to hear what I want to share. I may disappoint you a bit because I am not here to speak much about the legal cases that are happening. And as you know, when things are happening in courts, we have to be very cautious with how and how much we communicate in public forums. So today, I don't have much of an ambition to share much about the court cases. You may ask questions. If there are questions that I can answer, I would do so. But as first statement that I think you have been seeing it, and it has been the topic of our engagement with our members all along the past weeks. It has been to reassure our members that Afrinic is here to stay. The registry is working. We are continuing to support and to work for our community and delivering the services. We are registering new members. We are communicating with members who have not yet paid their dues and encouraging them to pay. And actually the funds are going into the accounts that are attached for the time being, because the attachment is only for outgoing funds, but the incoming flows are coming. And if you do not honor the bills, we unfortunately will have to follow the process. And on a personal note, I also would like to say that if there is any challenge in terms of quality of service and so on, feel free to escalate it to CEO at Afrinic, because the current situation is not a situation that is hampering us to operate. I would not be lying to you that it is an easy sale, that everything is simple and so on, but it is not at a point where we cannot deliver services. And we thank you all for the support messages and the support you've provided during this journey. Now, the topic today is learning lessons, and you'll allow me to be very personal. I'll be personal from the lessons that I learned, because it's those that I learned. Of course, there's going to be some lessons about Afrinic, or what Afrinic is doing, or how we are doing in this situation. And even the journey that I've seen at Afrinic during the 2 years now, soon 2 years to be 10 years that I've been CEO at Afrinic since November 2019. And also at the end, I'll come to you with personal questions, because I do believe that it is a situation that is kind of reaching or touching each one of us. And I'll come to that. So I joined Afrinic in November 2019, and early December, we had our meeting, our first public meeting as CEO. I had the meeting in Angola. At that time, we could travel. Life has not yet changed the way it has changed today. But in the meeting in Angola, I'd like to share a personal encounter or discussion that I had when we were coming from the social event. Because in that meeting, I was still learning and understanding. Of course, I knew when I joined that I'm not joining an easy sale. The organization had issues, and I knew that there were issues. But I can also say that I didn't know the level of all the issues that the organization was facing. And in Angola, I kind of realized one point that we have decided to tackle, and which is going to be the main discussion that I have with you today, in terms of how engaged is our community, but specifically our resource members. Because I recall this discussion I mentioned to you when we came from the social events after having a nice dinner, a nice dance, and drinks and so on. And I was talking with a member, a community member was there in the bus, because we drove to a nice data center, and then it was the first time I saw that, a party at a data center. So it was an interesting innovation, and I, because I'd seen what was happening in the room, I asked the gentleman, the young man that I was with in that session, I asked him, how long has he been participating? What is he doing in the conference and so on? And then, because I'd seen the way he was intervening and how he was intervening, I told him this. I told him, look, I don't mind that we're in a bottom-up environment. Each one is free to have his own view. But the problem I have with you is if the elements you raise when you come to the microphone are elements that, or statements that are coming from within your heart, within your mind, within what you believe, I don't have a problem with that. But if it is something that you're doing because you are asked to do so, because you have to do so, or this is the way you want to do, then in that case, I have a problem. I really ask him, do you really believe what you're asking? This stand that you're making it, do you really believe that? Because, you know, we came from that event, we had discussed, and the gentleman could not look at me in the eyes. He could not look at me in the eyes. He could not speak back. And I realized how deep the trouble is, or how deep the issue is in an environment where he cannot even have a discussion, or he cannot speak up on something that he's not proud to be doing or to be saying what he's saying. And when we started the journey of our strategic plan, I realized that it was obvious. We have lost touch with our resource members. It is obvious when you come to our AGMM or AES meeting, we have about 2,000 members, and you enter in a room where you hardly reach 50 members that are in the room. In the elections, you have small numbers, and you realize that, yes, our resource members, though we are serving them, we have lost touch with them. And in the strategic plan that we opted to go for, we had 4 drivers. One of them is the African engagement, the service delivery, the operation excellence, organization performance. But all those are terms that come in this statement that you can read at the left side or right side. The 2021-2023 strategy of growing into an efficient, customer-centric organization will be the stepping stone towards our future operating model. We acknowledge that we're in a transition. We acknowledge that a lot of things are changing. But we also acknowledge, that's why African engagement is #1 among the pillars there, that it is very important for us to regain the connection, to regain the relationship with our resource members, with the people who are actually coming to us, asking for resources and using the resources, growing the internet in different places. We are an organization that is there, that doesn't really, our activity or action can only be done through others. And yes, there's the community at large, but specifically the resource members are the people that are building networks out there and growing networks out there, doing business, taking resources from us. And it's very important that we regain I would say, the personal relationship or the personal connection with them, so that we build for them, we build with them, we work with them. So today, I just wanted to share with you that we want, and we've been working for all this time, even before all the issues started, towards a project called Jenga. We call the project Jenga, which was in Swahili, Jenga is building, rebuilding the trust, rebuilding the relationship, rebuilding the connection. And we are connecting things. And most of our members are also dealing in connectivity. And one person lately told me that there is a game called Jenga, where actually instead of building, you destroy. So you remove things, and it could be seen in different ways, but what we meant when we started that was to Jenga, to build the relationship, to build the connection, or to rebuild it, because I'm sure that at one point Afrinic had it. Something happened, it's a relationship, and things are still happening. And people have pathways, or they've started dealing or working at a distance. And yet we are all intertwined, and yet we are all called to collaborate and work together. At this junction, I'd like to take 1 minute and take responsibility for the organization. I've seen an email a few days back when on our community list, where you hear people saying that Afrinic has done bad things. Afrinic has not, I have things against Afrinic. And there's nothing we can do about that apart from apologizing. And today, as our members or resource members, please take our apology. We've not been perfect. We've not done things the way you would have expected us to do. We've not allowed you to enjoy the sessions or the meeting or your presence on our platform sometimes in a way that you would want to continue interacting with us. And for this, I'm sorry, and we apologize. And I speak on behalf of Afrinic. The other image that I wanted to share, or that I wanted to discuss with you, is an image of a restaurant. I see us, I like to speak a lot in images, as a restaurant where you have your own business, you have your own activities that you do, but for time to time you go to a restaurant, for time to time you go out, for time to time you hang out with friends and so on. And this is what one of our values, apart from excellence, passion, integrity, and community-driven, one of our values is to be community-driven, building communities, creating environment. And I recall when I used to go in Afrinic meeting, AFNOG meeting, things I'll learn, the people I'll meet, the connection I'll have, and up to today, I still call some of you in this room that I've checked on the list, brothers, cousins, friends, and we've built it together in this community. And I believe that this is one of the purpose of the restaurants that we are, if you allow me the image. But when you see a restaurant where whenever you enter, all you see is just bottles flying over the place and people screaming at each other, the music is too loud and so on, eventually you do not feel that this is the place where you want to be. And I do understand that, and I can understand any of that. But today, I've come because we faced challenges, and it's obvious that if we are in challenges, the impact on your business or the impact on what is happening could be big. And we've taken all the measures to ensure this doesn't happen. But one of the lessons that we are learning is we cannot afford to just go on like this without having a relationship, without having a connection, because this is the essence of the bottom up. As I said, when I looked at that mailing list discussion, you have someone who gets to a point where he calls out Afrinic as a criminal organization that doesn't even understand their words, they don't understand their policies, they don't understand anything. And okay, it's fine. There are people who think that it is totally hopeless with us. That's one thing. But is it everyone that thinks like this? Is it everyone that believes that this organization has totally lost the North and it cannot do anything serious? When I speak with my colleague, we speak about operational excellence because I think this is the only way that we have to ensure that we at least serve you to a point where you are happy with the services, but not only happy, but you even become a raving fans. We have embarked in this journey. When you see customer-centric organization, we've embarked into a journey that we call the agile transformation. Some people say that it's not agile, it's a buzzword and so on. But the main point for us in this agile transformation, it is to do with our existence. We are supposed to be a community-based or community-centric organization. Any business needs to be able to have a decent relationship with the customers. Actually, the word customer there is not by accident, because one of the discussions we had with the colleagues when I joined, they used to say, but these are the members. But I told them, guys, we need to call them customers. We need to continue treating them as customers. And there is no other place like this one where we can involve even the customers in the decision we're making, in the orientation we're making. We are now doing a new version of Afrinic, MyAfrinic. And in that new version of MyAfrinic, we cannot just decide from Mauritius and say that this is what the members need. If we don't have this type of interaction where we interact with you, we hear what you think, we are co-creating with you. And this is what I think is also one of the lessons that we need to learn in this situation. Of course, this situation, when we started the Agile journey, there is this saying that Agile is there to help us in this VUCA world. I just Googled all the acronym of VUCA world, which is volatile. I knew volatile and uncertain. I had to look for the two other words, which are complex and ambiguous. And COVID showed us that we are in a volatile world, but even the current situation that we've seen showed us that things are not necessarily going to be the same way. And in technology environment, things keep on changing. So today, as I said, it was a personal discussion, and I committed to do 15 minutes talk because I really want to hear from you. I really want to know, and not I, all of us here at Afrinic, we think that part of the solution to the current situation is a renewed engagement from the resource members. I've seen some colleagues and friends on the list. I've seen some of the messages that they've been sharing, that guys participate in the election, participate into the session, participate in the policy discussion. By the way, the policy discussion, we don't see a lot of resource members speaking up. We don't hear your voice. I know we may have our part into why we reach here, but should we stay there? And this is the main question that I want to conclude with. Should we stay there? Is this the end of the road? Is there any hope? Is there any possible relationship that we can have? Can we rebuild together? As I said, there is no issue for the internet. I have no fear that the internet in Africa will be disturbed or hampered or so on. There's so many layers of protection around this. And I'd like also to appreciate some of you here, even when the bank accounts were attached, before we started negotiating with our providers, some of you here contacted us saying, we don't expect any payment soon. Fix your issues first, then you can pay us. This is community. And most of our services are in South Africa, and I just want to appreciate those who did that. And even those that after we reached out to you, you showed us a very good understanding, because you know that we're serving a bigger cause than just organization that is Afrinic. Afrinic, the organization, has issues. We are in court, it's Afrinic, the organization, but the internet, we will make sure it continues to operate. And if not us, the thing will continue to run. I'm sure for that. Internet is so important. So as a conclusion, I have a backup slide in case you don't have questions. I'll have questions for you, because today I've come to check with you. Can we have you back in our discussions? Can we hear your voice? Because I know in the SAFNOG and any NOG, I'm meeting another NOG, there is the operators and the people with ASN, we're talking about peer discussion, peer group discussion. You have resources. Can we hear more of your voice? And what can we do to encourage you to do that? What can we do to ensure that you are safe when you do that? We know there are places where we still need to improve, and we're working towards that. And we are also, our ears are also wide open to hear what you expect, what you want us to improve or do for you to be liking our restaurant. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Edie. We have Matthew that raised his hand. You could please post your question.
We have some questions in the Q&A. Crystal, maybe if we can deal with those meanwhile. Thanks.
Okay. The first question. I am discouraged from participating in Afrinic because it does not seem to be about resources, but regional politics, racism. What is Afrinic doing so that we can all be part of the community?
Wow, okay. I don't have any, how can I say this? Yeah, let me answer with my own example. I'm a Black person in Mauritius. The majority of Mauritius people are of Indian ascendance. So I didn't know that part about Mauritius. We have multiple ethnic group here. Chinese, Black, white also from France, South African. There's so many people. And we will not fix racism just like this. These are things that are ingrained, it's personal experience, it's personal things, and we're in a diverse organization where people have been raised in different manners and so on. AFRINIC as an organization does not condone racism, does not condone most of all the things that I even see people saying that a former CEO of AFRINIC did this. He was not a CEO, you know that. And these are realities of every community. You will not say that you are not going to go to South Africa because there's a lot of racism. It is there. You'll find people that are racist, but when the organization itself, or the institution itself does not condone this type of things, then you create an environment where things will work. Let me tell you, I come from Rwanda. Let me use my example too. Rwanda had a genocide, but will we say that I'll stop going to Rwanda because there are Hutus and Tutsis that are killing each other, or that killed each other one time, or that even today still talk evil about each other? But the moment we don't have this label on the ID, yes, there'll still be people who will look, there'll still be people who will speak their mind. Someone called us yesterday, a criminal organization. You need to understand the discussion that's happening in the house here. But AFRINIC as an organization does not condone racism, does not condone regional politics and all that. And whenever you see those, please call them out or call us out. My commitment to you and the commitment of all the people I deal with is to ensure that we allow everyone to have his space and his voice. We understand it's not that easy when there's this much history in the back. Maybe it is simpler for me because I've joined a bit late, but I've been there a bit for some time. And if you want to hear my personal voice, I had closed the door. I had closed the door at one point because it was too much politics. It was too painful to see what people are doing to this community that did so much good. But it is a personal choice. That's why I say it is a personal choice. It will be personal what I say and personal to you. I don't know who you are, but sincerely, if you want to fix something, it's very hard to fix it from where you are. I invite you to come back. I invite you to speak up whenever you see something that is out of. The only thing that will make sure through the code of conduct, through the different documents that are there, through the decision that are made, and when we go wrong, this was I spoke about relationship. When we go wrong, speak up. If a husband and wife don't want to speak because you made a mistake once and you don't accept an apology, remember, I made an apology, a public one, okay, and you don't accept an apology, how can we restart it afresh? So I don't know how else I can say or what else I can say, but please come back, be part of it. And if you really want to have a personal discussion about this, I'm open. CEO at AFRINIC or AD at AFRINIC, I'll respond. One of you, I came in a members discussion with the South Africa region, and one of you was asking too many questions. I made time to spend 30 minutes one-to-one with him to explain that, because I know it is one person at a time. So you're anonymous here in this meeting, but you too count. And if you're a resource member, even more. Bill, sorry, there is a question.
Thank you for that.
From Bill.
There's another question. Is there anything, sorry?
Go ahead.
Is there anything we as AFRINIC members can do to help the Mauritius government and courts understand the critical regional and global role that AFRINIC plays and the importance of the responsibility as AFRINIC's host?
Well, it is one of those slippery questions, as I said at the beginning, but my personal view is that the Mauritius government is very much aware of that. And we have discussion with the government. We've got discussion with the government working groups, and where for one of the meetings that we did with when we did the outreach in our Jenga, which was to discuss with the government. And you know, for those who come to a meeting, we generally have people from ministries that join, directors or regulators. But for that meeting, we had 8 ministers in the room, and even the Minister of Mauritius was present in the room when we had the discussion about the current situation. At this point, it's very important that we allow the courts to do their role, to play their role, and to analyze things without any pressure. They're all aware of what is happening, and they are very responsible institution and very honorable institution. So, and as I said multiple times, it is what has happened is a temporary decision, a temporary decision based on a claim from one member. Let's give them the time to assess, and eventually we will know how to deal with that. Of course, at this point, we are doing a lot of scenario analysis, but I would not want us to go in excessive premature activities or action, because we know the government is very much aware, the courts are very much aware of what's happening. And as we speak, as we say, if your ticket is delayed, let me know. We'll make sure it is not delayed, because we're still operating and we're still fine. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There hasn't been any more questions. I think you've answered them all.
So in that case, I have my backup slide if I still have some minutes. Do I?
I can give you 1 more minute.
Okay. Here are some of the questions that we thought of on what do you think we can do to create a better engagement with our members? Or what do you think we can do differently to serve our members and community? And what are your views on the current member engagement? I think whether you say it or not, we can see it in our meetings, we can see it in our sessions. Some of you are very there, you are very, I can see even some of the people who are not for Southern Africa on this call, and some people who are very dedicated and very present, and we thank you. But I believe that with a member base of almost 2,000, we can do better. And if there's anything you think we can do to improve and make the ambience better, the music better, the sound better, the food better. If I speak of my restaurant analogy, please don't refrain to say so. You can put it in the public list. You can even have a direct email to myself or direct call to myself. We are very much open to that, and we know that this is part of what we need to do to thrive as an organization. We've learned that lesson, at least that one we've learned it. Thank you very much.
I've got a few more coming in. Can you read this one? I'm happy with the professionalism of AFRINIC in resource management, both from the commercial background in the past and currently in a community setting. The reality is that AFRINIC operates in a cultural environment where the worst sorts currently rise to the top in public forums. They do not represent the majority and are not the majority. Issues will occur and will be resolved. Professionalism carries AFRINIC through it all. Does AFRINIC have ambassadors that will carry out good message to the world?
Thank you. I have a simple answer for that. Yes, we're doing all we can to have ambassadors, but who is the best ambassador if not you? And this is what I've come to ask you today. Can you come back at the table? Who is the best ambassador if not you? Because today, if we go and moderate the one that has called us a criminal organization, he called us criminal organization. You all kept quiet. One of you pointed it out. We kept quiet. Are we a criminal organization? We are not a criminal organization. We are a decent people, a decent group of people. Yes, we've faced issues, but we are not that. But are we going to go and blow our own trumpet? we need our ambassadors, and you are the best ambassador we can have. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Got another one for you. Hey, Eddie, difficult to avoid the elephant in the room, but I understand you have to be careful until the case is resolved. One complaint I've heard from a few ISPs is it is difficult for the one to get new ISP address space. How will the current issues regarding the WHOIS database and the court cases affect the availability of IPv4 space? Just so people know what to expect.
Yeah, thank you, Jan. Yeah, the elephant is too big for us to avoid it, but let's do our best. We can squeeze it a bit and continue our life, which is our daily exercise as we serve you. Now, difficult to get new IP address space. I don't think we've changed anything. We only changed the level of IP you can get because of the soft landing phase 2, where we can only provide up to a /22. And when people comply with that, we do our best. We provide the resources. We have an internal KPI and even a public KPI in our strategic plan of the number of members that we onboard, which is quite stretching. And we also going to even do more communication, not much as a commercial entity, but communication to gain more members. So we understand that could be a bit complex. And we also think that we'll do some training on how to simplify this, because sometimes when you've not been around and you're new, some of the terms can be a bit difficult for you. So we're also seeing how to improve that. But the current issue regarding the WHOIS database and the court cases, the availability, well, they are not going to, life continues until, and we are not the only company that has court cases. There are court cases, but the resources are still the same resources that were in the pool. And we are continuing to serve you with the best of our capacity during this current season. So I don't expect any drastic change. I'd want to say it's business as usual, though it's not necessarily exactly business as usual. But as far as you are concerned, it should be business as usual. And this is what we are aiming for, and this is what we're doing. So you, as I said, the customers and the members. And yeah, so this is what we're doing and ensuring that you served adequately. And the resource, the pool that was available before the cases is the same pool that is there.
Okay, next question.
Yes.
After the first 2 months, operation expenses being permitted by the court about 2 months ago, are you confident to regularly get okay to cover operational expenses?
Yes, my simple answer to that is yes. I'm very confident that we are, this is the second month, as you said, and here we are. I'm in the office, there's lights, there's internet, there's things are still flying, and we are paid, decision in court are taken, and so on. So I say yes, because some of you have been even asking, why are we not going to the joint RIR funds? It's a fund that is available. The community has mobilized and did some fundraising. We really, really appreciate the effort you've done. It has come very handy in this situation. The court has also allowed us to tap into it. We are still doing effort in the court to resist the current attachment and so on, and it will happen in court. And in case all of these fail, we still have the joint RR fund that is there. And you've seen two public statements, at least from ARIN and RAP NCC, that they have the okay from the board that they will support in case we call for it. We know that in case we don't have any other option, we still have our brothers or sisters from the other RIRs who are going to support. So I really have no issue. Yes, it could be just a certain portion of the company that is going to be covered, but that discussion will cross that bridge when we get there. At this point, we're still okay, and I have good confidence that things will continue to run and that the court will make a decision soon in either direction, and we will know how to take our steps from that final decision that we'll get in court.
Thank you very much, Eddie. See, there's no more questions that came in. You've covered them. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Before we move on to Noah, we just want to say thank you once again to our platinum and gold sponsors. Manny, when you're ready. Thank you to our platinum sponsors, Akamai, Flex Optics Team Camry, and our gold sponsors, Africa Data Center, ICANN, Internet Society, Work Online. Without you, we wouldn't have been able to have our event. Thank you once again to all our sponsors. I'd like to introduce you to Noah Manno, who will be doing our peering personals, treating our peering personals. Sponsored by IXZA and Links. Hi, Noah.
Hi. Can you see me?
I can see you.
Okay, thank you. So for starters, I'm going to request you to basically allow Mike Heller from Links, Matthew Ingwende from Liquid, Yolande Robinson from NAP, and Andre Albert from Africa Data Centers, and Darwin Da Costa as speakers. Christo?
Yes.
Yeah, I just want to make
sure.
Yeah, they're all in. Good.
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much. So I'll put up the slides. All right. I'm sure you can see the slides. Okay, just leave it at that. Okay. Thank you so much. Welcome everyone for the peering personal session. My name's Noah Maina. I work for CCOM, and I'll just be running through this again like yesterday, where we look at the peering landscape in the continent and beyond the continent. Today we have a couple of presenters. So I'll start with the first presenter, who will be Mike Heller from Links. So I'll put up your slide, and then you can basically talk a few about Links. Mike, you're welcome. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Noah. Good afternoon, everybody. Yeah, just a quick update from us at Links. I think the majority of us, the majority of you know us. We're London Internet Exchange. In London, our network, we cover 16 different sites, but we also have exchanges in Manchester, Wales and Scotland here in the UK, and in Northern Virginia in the United States. We also operate.
Sorry. No, can you go into presentation mode, please?
Oh, okay. Sorry, one sec. There you go.
Thank you. You may continue.
Thank you. Yes, so in addition, we're also operating JEDIX in Saudi Arabia, which we're operating for STC. And we recently announced that we're going to be providing the network and operating the network for MENX-IX, which is on the Isle of Man, very close here to us in the UK. We haven't stand still, as nobody has over the last couple of months. So in Northern Virginia in the US, we've added 2 data centers to our network, Iron Mountain in Manassas and QTS in Ashburn. And we have also partnered with NYIX in New York, which allows our our members in the US, if they're peering on our exchange, to get a direct connection to NYIX, and the other way around. So networks connected to NYIX can get a connection to our exchange. We do have similar partnerships here in the UK, where members from JPIX in Japan or NAMEX in Italy can get connections from their exchange there to our London exchanges, and there is more to come. And similar, we are continuously expanding the type and the amount of services that we make available across our fabrics, things like private VLAN, closed user groups, or connections to cloud providers. In addition to, of course, peering, we provide a private interconnect service and collocation in some of the sites. And yeah, our networks keep growing. We're now reaching 6 terabits per second on a regular basis, which is nice to see. And yeah, that's a quick overview of links and latest changes. If you have any questions, want to contact us, my email address is on there, or contact us at sales@links.net for anything where we can help you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mike, and a pleasure to have you. The next speaker will be Matthew. Matthew, please go ahead.
Hi, good afternoon, Southern Africa. My name is Matthew Chigwende. I come from Southern Africa. I'm Group Head of Network Engineering for Liquid. We recently rebranded as Liquid Intelligent Technologies. It's quite a pleasure to work with most of the people I've seen in this conference. So from a network point of view, we are across Africa, Southern Africa and East Africa being our stronghold. And as you can see from our network spanning across Africa now into West Africa, we are now covering and working on east to west of Africa. And if you look further on the east, we are now on the west of Africa now. We have just started connecting and operating in Nigeria. So coming on to peering, we are using our single AS30844 across all Africa and in Europe. Our peering policy is generally open. We say we are selective because we do not peer with our customers, and those who peer with our customers, sometimes we can't peer with them. For us to peer with us, you need to contact us peering at liquidtelecom.com or peering at liquid.tech, which is on, and we are also on peering DB. Just on the next slide, we're going to show where we peer. We are on AM6 in Netherlands, and also in France IX and DKIX in Marseille. From the UK, yes, we are on links 1 and 2 in the Equinix. UAE, Fujairah there. And in South Africa, we are all at the main peering points, at the NAP Africas and Sinks, Jinx, and recently in Durban as well. In Kenya, KIXP, TIX in Tanzania, UIXP in Uganda, and as I said, the new one, NIXP in Nigeria. So we are trying to expand this market in the west of Africa. In some places like Zimbabwe and Zambia, we do peer, but with the local AS numbers, but we do support the local community. So this is from And once again, it's peering@liquid.tech. Thanks, Noah.
Thank you, bro. Cheers. Next is Yolandi. Please go ahead, South Africa.
Hey, no, it's actually Andrew here. You'll hear that I'm definitely not Yolandi.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's fine. Yolandi had to attend to another matter. I'm Andrew. I'm from NAP Africa, and just want to say thank you to the SAFNOG team for carrying on with this event and the good work that you're doing. NAP Africa operates internet exchanges in Johannesburg, Cape Town, and Durban. We have 520 unique ASNs connected to the exchanges, and we reach approximately 26 African countries, mostly out of Johannesburg. We still don't charge for ports or cross connects, so we like to remind everybody that peering should be free. We have just over 1,500 active ports and 21 terabits of connected capacity. And since every cloud has a silver lining, we've seen a 120% increase in traffic across the exchange since the lockdown started in South Africa. So we're currently peaking at 2.2 terabits per second of traffic. Across the exchange platform, we also offer cloud connectivity and private VLAN services between networks as well. Thanks very much, everyone.
Yeah, and that's the contact. Thank you. Yeah, next is basically Andre from Africa Data Centers.
Good afternoon. My name is Andre Alberts. I'm the project manager for connectivity at Africa Data Centers. So strictly speaking, I'm not doing a peering personal, but knowing where you can peer is sort of a prerequisite for knowing who you can peer with. Africa Data Centers is Pan-Africa. We've got a presence in South, East, and West Africa, and specifically in Kenya, Nigeria, Togo, and South Africa. We use IXZeta as a peering provider and have Jinx and Syncs present in our Midrand and Cape Town facilities. Africa Data Centers provide a zero-rated connection to these exchanges, and that includes the cross-connect and the exchange port fee. We support IXZeta to build a rich and diverse peering landscape in South Africa. Thanks, Noah.
Cheers. Thanks, Andre. And then we'll have Darwin.
Yes, thanks, Noah. And first of all, I would like to thank the entire organization of SAFNOG for putting this together. Thank you very much, guys. My name is Darwin, and I work currently for DKIX, the German Internet Exchange Point, or well known with the IS 6695 out of Frankfurt. We have, as an IX, we have an open peering policy, and currently we do operate in many locations, such as Chennai, Dallas, Delhi, Frankfurt, Lisbon, Chicago, and one which was announced a couple of weeks ago in Phoenix. So we keep growing and we keeping up with the momentum, and we will keep you guys updated with peering personals on various events. For any further contacts, we have our information updated on Peering DB, so feel free to look into it. Thank you very much, Noah, and to the organization again. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, bro. Yeah, and that is it for the peering landscape in the peering personal for today. Thank you so much, guys, and I will give the floor back to my hosts. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Noah.
Yes.
So once again, we'd like to say thank you for everyone who attended, our sponsors and our speakers. We really appreciate it. Without you, it wouldn't have been possible. To our platinum sponsors, Akamai, Flex Optics, Team Camry, our gold sponsors, Africa Data Center, ICANN, Internet Society, and Work Online. Our peering sponsors, IXZeta and Links, and not last but least, community sponsor, NAP Africa. Thank you very much. We look forward to seeing you next year in person this time, somewhere in the sub-region for SAFNOG-7. Thank you, everyone. Please connect with us. Our Twitter handle is on the screen as well as our Instagram. And if you'd like to join our mailing list, please do so. Thank you.